Aloha Jivas, welcome to our reading of Bhagavad Gita as it is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Prabhupad. We are starting a new chapter today and it's called Transcendental Knowledge. Let's get into it. Text 1. This is chapter 4, by the way. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Iman Vivasvate Yogam Praktavan Aham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manor Ikshva Kave Bravit. The Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Purport. Herein we find the history of the Bhagavad Gita traced from a remote time when it was delivered to the royal order, the kings of all planets. This science is especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand it in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from the material bondage to lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. In other words, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness, so that the people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path, utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. In this millennium, the sun god is known as Vivasvan, the king of the sun, which is the origin of all planets within the solar system. In the Brahma Samhita it is stated, Yakchakshor Isha Savita Sakla Grahanam Raja Samasta Sura Murtir Ashisha Tejaha Yasya Gyaya Brahmati Samprita Kalachakro Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Let me worship, Lord Brahma said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person, and under whose order the sun, which is the king of all planets, is assuming immense power and heat. The sun represents the eye of the Lord and traverses its orbit in obedience to his order. Unquote. The sun is the king of the planets, and the sun god, at present of the name Vivasvan, rules the sun planet, which is controlling all other planets by supplying heat and light. He is rotating under the order of Krishna, and Lord Krishna originally made Vivasvan his first disciple to understand the science of Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is not, therefore, a speculative treatise for the insignificant mundane scholar, but is a standard book of knowledge coming down from time immemorial. In the Mahabharata, we can trace out the history of the Gita as follows. Treta Yugado Tratato Vivasvan Manave Dado Manushcha Loka Brityartam Sutayekshva Kave Dado Ikshvakuna Chakatito Vyapya Lokan Avistitaha. Translated as, quote, in the beginning of the Treta Yuga, millennium, this science of the relationship with the Supreme was delivered by Vivasvan to Manu. Manu, being the father of mankind, gave it to his son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this earth planet, and forefather of the Raghu dynasty, in which Lord Ramachandra appeared. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita existed in the human society from the time of Maharaj Ikshvaku." Unquote. At the present moment, we have just passed through 5,000 years of Kali Yuga, which lasts 432,000 years. Before this, there was Dwapara Yuga, which lasts 800,000 years. And before that, there was Treta Yuga, which lasts 1,200,000 years. Thus, some 2,005,000 years ago, Manu spoke the Bhagavad Gita to his disciple and son, Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this planet Earth. The age of the current Manu is calculated to last some 305,300,000 years, of which 120,400,000 have passed. Accepting that before the birth of Manu, the Gita was spoken by the Lord to his disciple, the sun god Vivasvan, a rough estimate is that the Gita was spoken at least 120,400,000 years ago. And in human society, it has been extant for 2 million years. It was re-spoken by the Lord again to Arjuna about 5,000 years ago. That is the rough estimate of the history of the Gita, according to the Gita itself, and according to the version of the speaker, Lord Sri Krishna. It was spoken to the sun god Vivasvan because he is also a Kshatriya, and is the father of all Kshatriyas, who are descendants of the sun god, or the Surya Vamsa Kshatriyas. Because Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Vedas, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this knowledge is aparushaya, superhuman. Since the Vedic instructions are accepted as they are, without human interpretation, the Gita must therefore be accepted without mundane interpretation. The mundane wranglers may speculate on the Gita in their own ways, but that is not Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita has to be accepted as it is from the disciplic succession, and it is described herein that the Lord spoke to the sun god spoke to his son Manu, and Manu spoke to his son Ikshvaku. You can kind of understand why speculators that are translating the Gita from that mundane foundation translate it in such a way as to assume and suppose that this is some sort of metaphor for something, as opposed to just taking it as its word, that yes, there is a sun god and his name is, sorry, I forgot already. Whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, and the same thing is kind of true about, when people discuss the Bible, like the Old Testament, right? Like did the flood really happen, or is this just some story to explain this or that? Was the sea actually parted, by whoever that was? Then people come up with archaeological evidence of an ark or of, this flood. And so, there is some controversy, but those with strong faith will accept scripture as it is told as truth. And so that's your choice to do. But I mean, this is actually one of the things that really spoke to me, because in my spiritual search, I had these unanswered questions that no other religious books would, explain satisfactorily, especially things like, the history of mankind, or, the existence of life forms outside of Earth and what is out there in the universe, where he very clearly explains in Vedic scriptures what the greater universe is like, how the universe was actually came into existence. Those details are there in the Brahma Samhita, for example. So, and when I read these things, they resonated with me to the point where, like, yes, like this makes sense to me. I accept this, and so that's, one of the ways in which I've been attracted to and stayed committed to this path of Krishna consciousness. All right, let's continue. Text 2. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu shakalanaha mahata yogo nashtaha parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is, appears to be lost. Purport. It is clearly stated that the Gita was especially meant for the saintly kings, because they were to execute its purpose in ruling over the citizens. Certainly, Bhagavad Gita was never meant for the demonic persons who would dissipate its value for no one's benefit and would devise all types of interpretations according to personal whims. As soon as the original purpose was scattered by the motives of the unscrupulous commentators, there arose the need to re-establish the disciplic succession. 5,000 years ago, it was detected by the Lord himself that the disciplic succession was broken, and therefore he declared that the purpose of the Gita appeared to be lost. In the same way, at the present moment also, there are so many editions of the Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to authorized disciplic succession. There are innumerable interpretations rendered by different mundane scholars, but almost all of them do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, although they make a good business on the words of Sri Krishna. This spirit is demonic, because demons do not believe in God, but simply enjoy the property of the Supreme. Since there is a great need of an edition of the Gita in English, as it is received by the Parampara, disciplic succession system, an attempt is made herewith to fulfill this great want. Bhagavad Gita, accepted as it is a great boon to humanity. But if it is accepted as a treatise of philosophical speculations, it is simply a waste of time. So according to the Vedas, and as it was explained in the last verse, there's different ages that time cycles through, and time in the material realm. And we are in Kali Yuga, which is characterized by hypocrisy, quarrel, corruption, short lives. Humans themselves have smaller bodies, and short memories, and all, it's not the fun and glorious age to be in, generally. But and so in other yugas, where goodness prevails, then the leaders in the world are righteous, and they take responsibility for ensuring that all people are taken care of and all people have an opportunity to take advantage of this human form of life to become Krishna consciousness, to have, the highest understandings of reality, and to nurture your soul's relationship with its connection to divine, to the source of all. Unfortunately, now, as is very evident, the leaders of our world are demonic, constantly warring and meeting and to plan their profits off of the slave labor of the rest of most of the world. So let's continue one more verse. We're gonna finish here. Text 3. Sa evaya maya tedya yogaha praktaha puratanaha bhakto shime shakachati rahasyam hyatad uttamam. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Purport. There are two classes of men, namely the devotee and the demon. The Lord selected Arjuna as the recipient of this great science, owing to his becoming the devotee of the Lord. But for the demon, it is not possible to understand this great mysterious science. There are a number of editions of this great book of knowledge, and some of them have commentaries by the devotees, and some of them have commentaries by the demons. Commentation by the devotees is real, whereas that of the demons is useless. Arjuna accepts Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and any commentary on the Gita, following in the footsteps of Arjuna, is real devotional service to the cause of this great science. The demonic, however, concoct something about Krishna and mislead the public and general readers from the path of Krishna's instructions. One should try to follow the disciplic succession from Arjuna and thus be benefited. I guess, with the connotation of demon, and, if it could come across as, super harsh and critical, but it reminds me of, and if you're familiar with the tarot, there's the devil card, and that card, what that card represents is like the propensity to act according to to lust, which was explained through the whole 3rd chapter. It's like self-sabotage. You may not even be aware of it, but just because, for example, you may not believe in reincarnation doesn't make it like not exist. So I guess the same is true, like, certain choices you make have consequences, and whether you're aware of them or not, they will play out at some point in this life or a future life. And so comparing a lifestyle that is inimical to the existence and presence of divinity is a choice. It is, it's gonna have its own consequences that, you may, like I said, you may or may not even experience in this life, but at some point, you'll wonder why, why is this happening to me? You might be a good person, but in your heart, but like karma has to play out, because like every soul is on its journey of self-realization, and that self-realization is the realization that You are part and parcel of the divine source of all things, which has personality of like sweetness and love, and I mean, it's nothing but goodness. And so at some point, your soul will come around, like all souls will. But so yeah, that's why it's using that term demonic, because you can either raise your consciousness, raise your vibration, or you can associate, act according to things that are of lower vibrations. And so that's the metaphor there. And thank you for sticking with me for this long reading that we had today. And I hope you are having another awesome day, and I'll see you next time. Hare Krishna.